Guys, what are you doing? It's Halloween. We need to get this place ready.
Oh, I apologize. I don't do manual labor.
Ugh. Arnold, what about you? You like lifting stuff, right? I'm tired from all the running from Blackheart on last week's episode. I didn't even get his signature. Schmeagol, Gollum, can you guys help?
Oh, we need fishes. We are so hungry.
Announcers, what about you? What's your excuse?
Aha! We just do commentary.
Yeah, it's kind of our thing. Okay, fine. Well, what if I told you all that this week's guest on the episode is the Spencer D.W.?
Be still, my paper heart. Did you just say Spencer D.W.?
Yeah, basically one of the greatest horror writers of all time.
Wait, Spencer is coming. I like him more than Blackheart. We need to clean up now.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying.
Fishies can wait, Scissors. We have to get everything ready. Stinky little hobbitses could have told us earlier.
Well, I mean, I made the announcement like always on Substack.
All right, Bob. Halloween preparations are underway. What do you think about this turn of events?
What? Oh, sorry. I was actually just reading Spencer D.W.'s latest story. It's fantastic. What did I miss?
Bradley just told us that Spencer is the guest on this week's podcast.
Wait, you're serious? Well, we can't just sit back and watch. We need to help.
Not to worry, you two. I will handle the narration from here.
Okay, guys, we're making good progress, but Spencer's going to be here any minute. We got to pick up the pace.
Hey, I'm here to record the interview for Saved as a Draft podcast. Is this the right place?
Bradley, aren't you going to greet our guest? I believe Bradley is starstruck. He is having what is known as a fangirl moment.
Oh my God! Spencer D.W. knows the name of my show! Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of the Saved as Draft podcast. When you're hearing this, it'll be Halloween, and while I'll be on a work trip this week when the episode goes live, I still have an amazing episode for you that I've recorded ahead of time with a guest truly befitting of this occasion. That's right, this week I've got a full interview for you all with the master of horror himself, Spencer D.W. Spencer is one of my favorite horror authors of all time, and he's someone that I've always wanted to interview, so I'm really excited for everyone to learn more about his craft and how he puts together such incredible stories with such unique and exceptional imagery. And as I mentioned, since I'll be out of town when this episode goes live, I'm not going to be able to go through all the narrative feast this week, so instead what I'm doing is I'm doubling the number of shoutouts. For this Halloween special, I've decided to give you all a look at the top 10 stories submitted to my First Indulgence challenge that has run from the beginning of October until today, with today being the last day. These are the stories that got the most likes, comments, and restacks in the month of October, and I do feature each author once so that we get 10 different authors in this week's shoutouts. I'll take you through each one and read an excerpt from them as well that's extended this time around compared to my usual excerpts, and then you can decide which one you want to dive in first because the links, of course, will be in the show notes. After that, we'll dive into our interview with Spencer on today's episode, and I'll talk about what's next after the First Indulgence reaches its end as of tonight at midnight. We still have to crown a winner for the contest this weekend, so stay tuned for those details in the coming week. Alright, that's all our housekeeping sorted, so let's dive into the top 10 stories from this month's First Indulgence Challenge right after a quick message from this week's sponsor. Today's episode of the Saved as Draft podcast is sponsored by Two-Way Journals.
Oh, hey, Bill. Doing some journaling?
Oh, hey Ron. Yeah, I got this great new journal that talks back to you. It even gives you writing ideas.
Oh wow, does it use like AI or something?
Ha! Absolutely not. It uses something way less dangerous. Demonic possession.
What?
Yeah, each journal is possessed by a unique demon who will give you personalized advice and writing ideas.
Are you sure that's safe?
Of course. Here, watch this. Hey Greg, give me an idea for a horror story.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic.
Bill, your nose is bleeding.
Oh, would you look at that? Anyway, I need to get to writing.
Tired of staring at a blank document and wish your journal would talk back? Bring home a two-way journal of your own and start brainstorming with a demon today. Alright, and for this week's episode, I decided to take a look at the top 10 stories from the First Indulgence. The way I did this was by looking at individual story scores and then going from highest to lowest. As I mentioned in the intro, I wanted to highlight as many authors as possible, so each author got one place on the leaderboard based on their highest performing story. That way, we're not going to see 2 or 3 stories from the same person in the top 10, even if that's the case going purely by score. So with all that aside, let's look at the 10 best stories from the First Indulgence as of this final week. And coming in at first place with 98 points, it's Abscission by Jennifer Jorgensen. This was a narrative feast, so it received a 1.5 times multiplier like all those stories, but even without that, the sheer number of points that this story has received is insane. And honestly, I'm not surprised though, because it is really, really good. Abscission tells the story of an apocalypse brought about by the Earth itself. A fog rises around the world, turning people into strange plant-human hybrids and causing painful deaths in the process. Not everyone dies, of course. Specifically, people who were good to the Earth or very young were spared. Eventually, though, even they started to change. Everyone changes eventually. As the story says, the Earth is always watching. The story centers around a girl who seems to be not only immune, but protected from the Earth itself, almost like it can't see her. To celebrate these top 10 stories, I'll also be reading extended excerpts from each, so here's a nice big slice of Jennifer's first place story. She stopped when she saw me, and when she saw her daughter, she flinched. Just once. Then, she smoothed her expression back into something professional and blank. "You brought her home," she said. "I figured the Earth sent me for a reason," I replied. She looked past me toward the open door, then back again. "Is it watching?" "I don't know," I said, but it didn't follow me in. That got a reaction. Just a flicker of something behind her eyes. Not panic, calculation. "What did she do?" she asked, gesturing toward her daughter. "She broke at least 3 post-fog regulations," I said, "and set off an explosive during dry season. You're lucky the spores didn't ignite." Phoebe's eyes narrowed. "My daughter is immune." "Yeah," I said. "I noticed." She didn't answer, but she looked worried now. "I also noticed the spores didn't guide me to her," I continued. "They didn't respond at all, until I got near your house. That got her. Not much, but enough." "I think," I said, "you figured out how to hide her. Not just from the spores, but from the Earth." Phoebe looked at me like I was a particularly stupid student interrupting her lecture. "I didn't hide her," she said. "I protected her." I paused. If she meant what I thought she meant, this could be important. "From what? Mutation? Degradation? Reprogramming?" Her tone was flat, scientific. "You call it adaptation, but what I've seen, what I've recorded, is physiological collapse rebuilt by environmental override. That's not symbiosis. It's not even evolution. It's parasitic control." "You're saying the Earth's a parasite?" "I'm saying it doesn't care what it turns us into," she answered angrily. Yeah, this woman was full-on pissed off at the world. I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, careful not to touch anything. "Worked out fine for you." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Did it? I had no control over my changes. I tried to stop it. Controlled my exposure, set specific thresholds. I didn't surrender my biology. It was taken." "And your daughter?" Her lips pressed into a hard line. "You blocked it from her," I said. "You shut out the spores, filtered the air, purged her immune response. What else?" Phoebe took a step closer. "She's stable, healthy, human. She's not visible to the Earth." "Exactly." Her voice was proud now. Too proud. "I built her an immunity, not from disease, from judgment." Something deep in my chest twitched. The spores pulsed once, sharply. Not a path, a warning. "You really think you can out-engineer the planet?" She didn't answer. Such an incredible concept, paired with insanely good writing and dialogue, as you can see. It's Jennifer at her best, and that's saying something because all of her work is amazing. Any final thoughts on this first place story, Lord Devereaux?
To think that one's own home could turn on them, and not only turn, but transform them as a punishment for their sins. It's a fascinating concept and flavor, one that is executed to perfection in this piece.
All right, and coming in at second place for the month with 83 points, it's The Warmth That Remains by Mary Ellen Brady. And And with this story, Mary Ellen enters the post-apocalypse with one of the freshest takes on the zombie concept that I've ever seen. Instead of the shambling dead, everyone is scorched, burned beyond recognition. Not only that, but our protagonist is one of them. She has become something more than human, and unlike the others, she can still speak and think for herself. It's with this concept that Mary Ellen sets up a world that she's revisited multiple times over the course of the challenge. If you haven't read where it all started, now's your chance. Here's an extended look at the warmth that remains. I call up to them. Please, I'm human. I'm a nurse. I can help. They huddle together, arguing. I can't hear the words, but the body language is clear. Fear, disagreement, desperation. Finally, the woman comes to the window. She's younger than me, maybe mid-20s, with short dark hair and a bandage wrapped around her left arm. You're glowing, she shouts down. Your skin. We can see it even from here. I look down at my hands. In the fading light, the network of veins is more visible, pulsing gently with amber light. I'm not sick. I'm not one of them. That's what they all say, one of the men yells. That's what my brother said, right before he stops, overcome. The woman continues. You need to go, now, before you turn completely, before you hurt someone. I would never. They all said that too. They close the curtains. I call out again, plead, but they don't respond. Eventually, I hear furniture being moved, barricades reinforced. Against me, against what I'm becoming. What am I becoming? I sink down against the wall, and the warmth surges through me like sympathy. They don't understand, it whispers. They're afraid, but you're not alone. You're never alone. Across the street, I sense more of the crispy zombies gathering. 3 of them, 5, a dozen. They don't approach the building where the survivors hide. They approach mine. They're not coming to attack. They're coming home. Day 7, I think. I found a journal in one of the apartments. It belonged to someone named Joshua. Reading it is like reading my own future. Day 1, I feel strange, hot, but in a good way, like I finally have energy again. Day 2, the heat is spreading. I'm not scared. Should I be scared? Day 3, saw my reflection. I'm glowing. Chloe saw it too. She won't come near me anymore. Day 5, I can hear them now. The burned ones. They're not monsters. They're calling. They want me to understand. Day 6, I'm so hot I can't touch anything without leaving marks. But I'm not burning. I'm becoming. This is evolution. The entry ends there, mid-sentence. On the next page, the handwriting degrades into illegible scratches, then stops entirely. At the bottom of the page, someone else, maybe Chloe, has written in different ink. He's gone. He walked out to join them. I'm alone now. I close the journal. My fingers leave scorch marks on the cover. The warmth is everywhere. It's settled. Permanent. Part of my fundamental structure. When I look at my arms, I can see deeper than skin. The heat moving through muscle and bone like currents in the ocean. My heart beats slower. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm not hungry. I haven't felt pain since the morning I woke up. I caught my reflection this afternoon and barely recognized myself. My skin has taken on a faint sheen. When I breathe out, steam warms the room. I've counted at least 20 zombies in the building. They don't threaten me. They simply exist. They crackle softly like a dying fire. Sometimes I walk among them and feel kinship. The warmth recognizes them. I'm terrified of this, I whisper. Amazing. Lord Devereaux, what did you think of this one?
The inclusion of crispy zombies offers a unique smoky flavor in this story, but the concept and flavors go so much deeper than that. Here, Mary Ellen has created a world where infection does not equivalent to damnation. That is, in and of itself, a fascinating and delicious concept.
All right, and coming in at 3rd place with a score of 72 points, it's The Architect by Verdant Butterfly. The brilliance of this story is that it leans into the horror in a way that we can only see from Verdant Butterfly's alternate publication, The Sable Butterfly. Seeing a truly dark story from this writer isn't unheard of, but this one made a huge impact when it arrived. In this story, she uses her iconic style of poetry to tell the tale of someone being held hostage by their own house. It's a tense roller coaster with perfect pacing that this writer always provides in her work. Check out this extended look. 3 months. 3 goddamn months in this hell. I still don't know why it picked me. Why won't it let me go? Please, I beg, my voice a whisper. Please, I exhale soft sobs into my knees. I think about my sister, back in Chicago, probably wondering why I haven't called. She must be worried sick. And Mom. God, they'll never know what happened. I'll just vanish, like those stories you hear about. Hikers lost in the woods, eaten by a bear. But this isn't the woods, and this isn't a bear. It's a house, this thing that's alive, and hungry for... what? What does it want? What do you want? I scream into the darkness, ending in a growl of frustration. My soul? My words? Please, I beg again, quieter, defeated. Please, someone care enough to look. I don't want to die here, forgotten. The darkness stretches on forever. I cry until there's nothing left but hiccups and snot. I'll be good, I whisper, rocking. I promise. You're beautiful. The best house I've ever lived in. Lies, but maybe it'll hear. It likes it when I praise it. It charmed me in, made me feel special, then trapped me. And now I'm begging a building for mercy. Incredible work. A terrifying piece from Verdant Butterfly. What did you think of this one, Lord Devereaux?
Verdant Butterfly in her sable butterfly form is a metamorphosis that must be studied. This shocking and twisting horror piece offers incredibly complex flavors of dread and tension. Dare I say, nearly a perfect bite.
And in fourth place with 66 points, it's The Bone Choir by Bent But True. This first story they did for the challenge was such an incredible jumping off point for their 31 days of horror. Taking place 24 hours after the end of the world, this story centers around a cathedral. The atmosphere is palpable from the very beginning of this story, but it's the dread that builds as it goes on that really sells the entire experience for me. The strange reaction to the singing, the borderline body horror that ensues, and the haunting, nearly crushing ending combined with superb writing to create a phenomenal story. Let's take a look at an extended excerpt from The Bone Choir. It came first as a shiver in the air, then as a cloud, every skeleton sighing in unison. Dust poured from their ribs, thick enough to choke me. I gagged, but the sound didn't stop. It vibrated, low and steady, a note that settled inside me and pulled at my chest like a string wound through my ribs. It wasn't song, it was rhythm, and my lungs obeyed. With each exhale, memories clawed up from the dark. My mother's last breath in a hospital bed. My brother's face under gray earth. The silence of an empty kitchen where I'd once shouted I was never coming back. Their mouths screamed in chorus with the bones, and for the first time since the world ended, I wanted to scream too. I stumbled down the aisle, fighting for my own rhythm, but the more I resisted, the heavier the song pressed, and then I saw their rib cages rising, not walking, not moving, breathing, bone against bone, like lungs had regrown just enough to sing. That's when I understood. They weren't worshiping. They were waiting. The air thickened. My chest burned. My ribs ached like they might split apart to join the harmony. I spat, but what came up wasn't spit. It was dust. Gray, bitter, spilling from my mouth like I'd swallowed the ash of a burned Bible. Communion turned rotten. I staggered toward the doors, but the aisle stretched like punishment. My knees buckled, palms smacked the wood. The gasp tore out of me, but it wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs, echoing through my throat, feeding the choir. Whoa, love it. Haunting, wildly unique, and so atmospheric. What did you think of this one, Lord Devereaux?
The Bone Choir was my first true sampling of Bent But True's work, and it made me a believer. The rich flavors of intrigue, of dread, of haunting beauty, and the dangers of blind faith are all layered upon each other with stunning precision. It is truly a work of art from a talented artist wielding a pen instead of a brush.
Good stuff. And coming in at 5th place with 65 points, it's Champoeg Road by Javier Misco. This one was for week 2 of the challenge and follows a crew of ghost hunters. This story also recently received some updated art and fully produced narration from Anthony Michael Malick, who is an incredibly talented voice actor here on Substack. This story's winning qualities come from Javier's exceptional characterization and dialogue. The world is immediately compelling and the people within it feel real and genuine as well. Not only that, but the story takes a turn into cosmic horror at one point, and Javier masterfully steps into that genre as well. Now again, I would recommend the full narration here that Javier posted, but in keeping with our shoutouts this week, here's an extended look. A motor rumbled somewhere under him. Josh choked on exhaust. He tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids wouldn't move. Something was scraping against his back. His arms were above his head, dead weight. Finally, a crack in his eyelids. Stars were sliding by. His eyes scanned from side to side. His heartbeat thumped in his ear. He tried to talk. He tried to scream. The sky vanished, replaced by wooden rafters bathed in flickering light. The motor stopped. Footsteps. "You're awake." Mrs. Deer was standing over him. "I knew you didn't eat all your dinner. Shame on you." She grabbed his arms and threw them onto his chest. He tried to scream, but nothing came. "Don't bother, dear. You may not have had a full dose, but your vocal cords will be paralyzed for a bit longer. It's better this way." Cold metal on his wrists and the unmistakable click of handcuffs ratcheting shut. She was at his legs. "Your little friend ate so much of the pie, I was afraid he'd overdose." Something heavy wrapped around his ankles. She walked past his head. "I hope he wakes up soon. My lord won't be pleased if he's sleeping." Josh tried to look up, but his head still wouldn't move. A chain rattled and scraped against the ground. She looped it around his wrists. She walked away. A deep rattle of the chain ratcheting through something. His arms were being hauled over his head. It was dragging him. Then it pulled him up, his head sagging onto his chest. His arms felt like they were being pulled out of their sockets. His feet were hanging above the ground, and his body spun slowly as if he were on a spit. Mrs. Deer was under him. "I should thank you. I've never been able to see my lord, but with all this fancy equipment, I'll be able to watch him tonight." She clapped. "Be back in a jiff." She walked away. The motor started and moved away. Josh tried to scream at her. "Bitch!" The word came out as a garbled whisper. He could feel the cold saliva pouring out of his mouth onto his chin. He pushed to raise his head. It moved a bit to the side. He strained again and was able to lift it a fraction before it collapsed again. His arms were numb. He stared at the ground. He wasn't sure how much time passed as he kept trying. His breathing was ragged from the effort. Finally, he managed to lift his head without it collapsing onto his chest immediately. They were inside a barn. Candles burned on every surface. Chuck and Jessica hung from the other two rafters. He pushed his legs to move, but his feet just twitched slightly. There was a symbol painted in the middle of the barn. 3 rows of candles circled it. He'd read about summoning circles, but seeing one bathed in candlelight made the blood rush from his face. He tried to control his breathing. None of this is real. This crazy bitch might think it's real, but I know better. I've spent my entire life studying this shit, and I've never seen anything. The motor rumbled in the distance. His mind raced. There had to be a way out of this. If he could only talk. The motor got louder. Rage and fear surged inside him. He was helpless, utterly and completely fucked. Mrs. Deer was standing under him again. "I see you moving around a bit. That's good. Hopefully your little girlfriend will wake up soon. You know she's fucking that other fellow. What's his name again?" She walked away and grabbed one of the tripods. "My lord told me all about it. You should be thanking me, really. She would have broken your heart." She chuckled. "Though I suppose I did just let the cat out of the bag." She set up the camera facing him and the other two facing Chuck and Jessica. He looked at Jessica. She had to be lying. She would never do that. Though she made him hire Chuck as their assistant. He tried to argue, but gave in like he always did. He pushed the thoughts from his mind. "Okie dokie, that'll do it." She walked over to the small tractor and pulled something from the back compartment. It was a red robe. She pulled out a thick book and walked to the center of the barn. She opened the book and started chanting. Whoa! Amazing work from Javier. I was getting really into that scene. It's a shame I can't read the whole thing right now. It's a fantastic story, though. I read it back when Javier first published it, and at this time reading it again for narration, it's just as good, if not better. Amazing work. What did you think, Lord Devereaux?
Javier's foray into the paranormal and cosmic horror was a delightful surprise when this story first emerged, and it's just as satisfying upon a second taste. I must say, the dulcet tones of this Anthony Michael Malick also add a new set of flavor to the story by evoking emotion through audio. That gets me thinking I should devour more audiobooks.
All right, and in 6th place, it's The Crimson Veil by Connor Mancuso. This was for day 8 of the challenge, and it tasked writers with telling a story about someone who wakes up with bite marks and a craving for blood. It seems like it would be a vampire story, of course, but Connor took things in a more Lovecraftian direction, as I expected he would. In this case, the craving for blood runs deeper. It's more like a hunger that can't be satiated. And of course, the threat here comes from something that's essentially the embodiment of hunger. With Connor's work, we also get this really amazing epic poetry style that he does, and it always leads to fast-paced and engaging writing. So with that, let's check out an extended look at The Crimson Veil. He fell to his knees. Memory returned like shards of glass. The laughter, the music, the crimson wine poured endlessly. But there was something else. A sound beneath the revelry. A hum.
a song. The host had said it was nothing, a trick of the old pipes, perhaps the sea below. But he remembered now. The flicker of candles forming strange geometry, the taste of something metallic in the drink, the brief absence of stars when midnight struck. And now, the hunger. Not for food, not for blood as mortals name it. Yet the scent, the hunger, it was as if his very being was on fire for the consumption of blood, yet in a far deeper form. Something deeper, older, truer. He stumbled into the streets, the early fog rolling from the harbor like the breath of a dying god. The town lay still, every window dark, every sound muffled, as if the world itself had retreated inward. Seeking to hide out of fear? Who truly knew? He could hear it now, the pulse, the rhythm beneath his skin, synchronizing with the sea. The fog parted, revealing the lighthouse at the cliff's edge, its lantern extinguished, yet a crimson shimmer beating faintly from within. He moved toward it, unwilling yet unable to resist. Each step echoed, not against stone, but within his skull. The sound grew into the rhythm, the same unseen melody from the party, now clear, now calling. The blood remembers. The vessel answers. The door was open. Inside, the air pulsed like the chamber of a heart. Symbols carved into the stone walls glowed faintly red, not with fire, but with warmth, like breath upon glass, like the heat of a freshly baked bread from the hearth. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Chilling and wonderful cosmic horror. I love the way Connor took this prompt in a unique direction. What did you think, Lord Devereaux?
I think you've stolen my line. In truth, I was going to say something similar, but much like this entry, there are many layers to comment on. The idea that something can embody hunger and act as the essence of the universe is truly the most cosmic a concept can be. Tying this back into the human notion of hunger was truly a stroke of brilliance on Connor's part.
In 7th place with 53 points, it's Ophiocordyceps Drive by Brenda, A Voice That Wonders. This was for the first week prompt where I asked writers to tell a story set in the universe of Mina Howell's Ophiocordyceps series, which involves a fog sweeping the globe that infects anyone who breathes it in. Brenda dove right into this rich universe with her poem, which captures the fear and desperation of the people facing the fog from Mina's world. There's a panic to the pacing in this piece that really gets your heart racing as you're reading. The emotions come through strongly as well. It's a fantastic way to offer a glimpse into the world without trying to add an entirely new story that will fit into the existing canon. A smart approach, and a wonderfully tense entry. Here's an extended look at Ophiocordyceps Drive. Fog, fog, fog. Everywhere. Can't see. Where to? Drive to. Gray, slimy, thick, smelly, disgusting, awful, fungal spores. Keep the windows closed. People trying to stop the car. Gasping, coughing, choking, spluttering, nasty. Shout to a man, "Where am I?" Ophiocordyceps, he shouts back. Cough, cough. Slowly the fog exits the vents in my car. Gray, rotting, cloying. Notice that amazing pacing, the way that Brenda has it structured with those short lines and very tight stanzas. It really creates a nice pace when you're reading it. And hey, Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
Brenda has indeed been stretching her creative muscles with these entries for the challenge. With this piece, she offers unique flavors that carry the tone of the universe in question, but capture a moment instead of a wider scope. As a result, we are gifted rich, personalized flavors that reflect the depths of existential terror.
And in 8th place with 53 points, it's The Mist by Artemis. This story was for day 1 of the challenge, in which the prompt asked you to tell a story set 24 hours after the end of the world. This piece from Artemis placed us in a world choked by mist and showed us the horror of things that look like us but aren't us. I love the confusion and tension in this one. There's a scene early in the story where the character sees what she believes to be her reflection, only to realize it's not mimicking her movements. That moment alone sent chills down my entire body. The tension here continues to rise in this masterful horror tale. Here's an extended excerpt to give you an idea of what Artemis accomplished with this piece, The Mist. And then her heart froze in her chest. Her reflection, what she had taken as her reflection, did not nod with her. It stood, still and quiet, watching her.
She thought she took a step back, but her body was frozen, her legs rooted with fear, and they would not move, even when she forced them to. Whatever had posed as her reflection had moved. Standing behind her. It was standing behind her. Blurred by the mist and the reflection, a faceless shadow, like it was her own shadow, standing behind her. She blinked, but it didn't disappear. And, she realized, it had made no sound. None at all, because she hadn't heard it. It had simply appeared. When she could have sworn she was all alone in the white, mist-drenched world, so still and so silent. Her lips parted, to speak or to scream, but her voice had withered. When she blinked again, her eyes burning with the strain of keeping them open, the shadow, the thing, was gone, like the spiders that would disappear before she could kill them and that would haunt her waking hours. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, loud against the silence. No sound. It had made no sound. It had disappeared, but it wasn't really gone. She knew, somehow, that it was still watching her from somewhere, still floating near her in the sea of mist. She moved, stumbling to the back door of her mother's house by touch and memory, her fingers grazing the gray bricks, her heart in her throat. And when she found the door unlocked, the knob slipping in her damp hands, she could have wept for relief, but, instead, she slammed the door shut behind her, locking it with fingers that shook. The house was silent. Her numb footsteps took her to the window that overlooked the garden, where she had been standing moments ago. The world was a sea of white. She couldn't see anything of the garden. Even the sky was nothing more than a veil of pale mist. Her own reflection watched her back. She knew it by the frightened eyes. Then, behind the glass, she saw the thing, nothing more than a distorted silhouette, facing the house. But its eyes were fastened to her. She knew it. She knew it, whatever it was, a shadow, something other, was watching. This was excellent as well. Artemis's stories always have such rich atmosphere, it's impossible not to get pulled into them right from the beginning. What did you think of this one, Lord Devereaux?
Indeed, the depths of flavor that Artemis brings to the table cannot be overstated. This is an author who has mastered the craft of enrapturing the palate, delivering flavors that echo across the taste buds, a rich dance of savory, sweet, acidic, and a beautiful depth of umami to finish it off.
Coming in at 9th place with 48 points, it's Frying Bacon by Terrifying Tales. This story has an innocuous title and a harmless image, but don't let that fool you. That's just CJ Knight's way of luring you into his horror trap. This was a story for week 2 of the challenge, in which the prompts were focused on paranormal horror. It starts out innocent enough with some wholesome family moments, but then things in this story take a dark turn. What follows is an emotional roller coaster packed with twists and turns that will leave you breathless by the end. It's the kind of story that is enrapturing, heartbreaking, and incredibly immersive. One of my personal favorites this month. Here's an extended look at Frying Bacon. They ate breakfast. Lily, Ethan, and Rose, acting like the last year never happened. Rose filled their plates, poured juice, kissed their foreheads. James forced a bite of bacon past the lump in his throat. When Lily and Ethan left the table to play, Rose folded her hands over in her lap. Her eyes found James. "I've missed this so much." James sat his fork down, the lump in his throat holding words at bay. "I know it's strange. My coming back like nothing happened." "Nothing?" The word twisted in his throat. Something stirred inside him as he gazed at her gentle smile. It unlocked how happy he thought they'd been. The way she used to look at him in the morning. Memories he'd locked away when she left. Too painful to picture when he was alone. "You shouldn't be here, Rose." "Why would you say that?" The smile dropped from her lips. "Why can't we just go back to the way it was?" Her eyes drifted to the doorway, to the sound of Lily and Ethan playing together. "I've missed them, James. I've come back for them. Can't you just pretend to love me?" Rose leaned forward. "The way you used to pretend? You were so good at it." James stood, his chair toppled backward as he did. "Stop!" "Dad?" The children poked their heads through the door. James forced himself to smile, although the smile never reached his eyes. "It's fine. Go get ready for school." "Oh, let them stay home today, James." Rose stood. "They've missed me." Lily and Ethan hesitated in the doorway. Their eyes drifted between James and Rose. "Now!" James pointed down the hallway. They ran to obey, whispering as they left. Rose turned back to him. "I came back for them, James." "For them?" James felt the anger rise. "Yes," she smiled. "You can't keep me away from them. I carried them. I know their hearts. Tonight, I'll take them with me. Where they belong." James's knuckles cracked as his fists clenched.
Stay away from them.
You can see how things take a dark turn in that excerpt there. It's an amazing story, and don't forget you can find links to all 10 of these top stories in the show notes as well. Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
Terrifying Tales is indeed an appropriate moniker for this talented author. This story in particular lulls the palate into a false sense of security with the promise of warm, inviting flavors, only for them to go sour upon the tongue. As the story goes, they evolve into something far more terrifying, but just as satisfying to consume as perfectly cooked bacon.
And in 10th place, it's Out of Ashes by Ashes of Love Poetry at 46 points. This was for the day one prompt regarding a story set 24 hours after the world ends. As usual, Ashes here uses her unique style of poetry to excellent effect, weaving in prose and dialogue, but structuring it with rock-solid pacing and handcrafted stanzas. This combination of confusion, fear, and pain really pulls you into the world immediately once you start reading. We also quickly learn that our protagonist is looking for their daughter. Things continue to spiral from there, and the emotional impact is intense. Let's check out an extended look at Out of Ashes. The rumbling wakes me. I'm glad it did. That was a terrible nightmare. A world turned to ash. Open my eyes. Gray, cloudless sky. Chalky, ashy coating. It wasn't a nightmare. I try to stand, but my vision blurs, and I fall back down. My head spins. My limbs droop. But I can't stay here. That thing could come back. I don't have anything to fight it with. But I have to fight it. And find my daughter. She couldn't have gone far. Fear froze me last time, but this time, I have a reason to fight. She'll be so scared. She needs me. Ah! My head. It feels like something is trying to break out of it. Boom, boom, boom. Press a palm against it, but it hits slick, jagged flesh. I grimace. At least touching it doesn't add to the pain. Feel around the wound, a huge forehead-sized gash in an odd oval. There's blood on my hand, and some kind of black ooze. Probably why my head hurts so much. But I have nothing for it. I have to ignore it. Find a weapon. But there is nothing. Just me. I've found nothing else. Guess I'll have to search. Ava needs me. I can't just give up. My foot hits something. A stump? It's sharp and jagged. Maybe I can pull a piece off. I wrap my hands around. A big, vicious-looking piece. Tug and pull, grit my teeth. Every muscle in my arm screams before it finally snaps with a resounding crack. It stabs into my palm, just holding it, but I'm not defenseless now. I'm ready to fight when it comes back. Awesome. There's a sense of immersion and intensity here that I feel like you only get from Ashes of Love's work. It's truly a style all its own, and I love reading her work every time. Lord Devereaux, what did you think?
Ashes of Love Poetry is a shining gem in the poetry community. Her iconic style of blended prose and intense flavors gives her work a unique flavor all its own when combined. You could blindfold me and provide a sample, and I would be able to taste those rich flavors on my palate every time. A truly talented writer.
Amazing. Well, I hope you enjoyed this special Halloween edition of our weekly shoutouts, and congrats again to the top 10 stories from the First Indulgence. Myself and a few volunteers will be adding up all the final scores this weekend after Halloween. Soon, I will be reaching out to the winner based on total scores across all submissions, and that means that next week's episode will feature a fully narrated story from the winning author in the challenge. Since I had to record this particular episode early, I won't be featuring the narrative feasts this time around, but on November 7th, you can expect to check out the final narrative feast stories in that episode as well. In the meantime, we've got a very special guest interview coming up next, right after another short message.
I've finished tasting all the stories from the First Indulgence. Dear me, I believe I will require a larger size of pants moving forward.
We're sad. We want more stories.
Guys, don't worry, there's going to be other challenges.
No, I don't want to wait. I need to pump up my word count. Give me more prompts. Do it now. You know, now that he mentions it, I am actually quite a bit peckish.
There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you all. My lord. Lord Devereaux's castle is quite the maze. Finton, what's wrong? Why are you out of breath?
Oh no, don't tell me Blackheart found us again. No, I'm here because there's a new writing challenge coming very soon from Jennifer Jorgensen. Wait, really? What's it about? It's called The Unquiet World, and it's a new shared universe where the dead come back from all eras of history, bringing with them their unfinished business and their cultural echoes. It's really quite amazing. Wow, that sounds really cool as a concept.
Yay! I want to write as a story, but I don't have any ideas. We want to write this about the spirit of a wealthy oil tycoon who deals in blood and oil. Ooh, I like that one.
I'm going to do a short story about the samurai who comes back to finish his mission.
Oh yes, that sounds positively delectable. When does this new challenge begin? I'll prepare my finest utensils.
Well, from what I understand, The Unquiet World launches November 1st and runs all the way to the end of 2025. But you can check out all the info on Jennifer Jorgensen's publication, Snark Floats. All right, and like Fenton said, I will put a link to Jennifer's post about this new challenge, along with all the other info, in the show notes. Get out of my way! I need to learn everything! Now! All right, and we're back. I'm really excited to partner with Jennifer for this new shared universe writing challenge for the remainder of 2025, so I hope you'll check out the details and try your hand at writing a story in this really unique setting. All right, and now it's time for a very special Halloween interview. This week, I've brought onto the show one of the best horror writers I have personally ever read, and one of the first friends I made here on Substack. So, without further delay, let's get into this week's interview. All right, everybody, and this week on the Saved as Draft podcast, I am extremely excited to welcome one of the first horror authors I met here on Substack, and one of my favorite horror authors in general. Please welcome to the show, Spencer D.W. Spencer, thank you for being here.
No problem.
So let's start off by having you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your creative journey thus far.
So yeah, Spencer D.W. Do mostly horror and stuff, but creative journey. It's wouldn't really call it that. It's more like a wave I rode. One of my friends was really supportive of me, and when I was like really in a slump creatively, especially, and he got me up and going pretty much, and was super encouraging. And ever since then, I kind of just haven't looked back.
Nice. It's always amazing to hear when people have like actual support, especially from a creative angle, because it's so important. Especially, just even just kind of taking that first step can be super daunting. So support is so like valuable there.
Absolutely.
Have you always been a writer, or when did you kind of know that you wanted to be a writer? When was that moment for you?
I mean, I still struggle even considering myself a writer now, but I feel like I've always kind of done writing to some extent. Mm-hmm. Like back in, I would say like grade school and stuff, I would write like poems, but I would say that they were song lyrics, so I didn't sound like a wimp or something. But I don't think it was until after I started DMing actually for Dungeons and Dragons for my friends where I really really love the idea of world building characters, building, scenarios, different stuff. And I felt like I was pretty good at it. So I kept going from there.
That's amazing. I did not, I may have known, but I did not know that you have experience DMing for D&D. That makes a lot of sense. Especially given your world building capabilities. How long have you been DMing for? And can you give us are there any particular campaigns that you did that kind of stand out to you?
Well, I haven't been able to DM for a while now since I moved to Pennsylvania. Me and my friends have been, because they're back in California, so they're on 3 hours, difference, and I haven't been able to continue it. But the longest was I did, I think, 8 years or something like that. I was DMing for them.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long one. I went through, I want to say 2 full campaigns and then a bunch of one shots and stuff. One of the best campaigns it basically ended with a total party kill. Like they all just died, but the person that killed him was an ex, or it was a player's ex character. So it was like there's basically a time jump, and that character had gone off and done their own thing, like RP reasons and stuff, and they basically came back around, and they were one of the big bads in that.
Right. That's amazing. I don't think I've ever heard of a campaign going that way. That's a pretty unique twist and turn of fate there.
Oh yeah, I'm very blessed to have characters, friends that were very much like they leaned on their characters of like what would they do. They were really into the role play of it, and that like really supported the storytelling because if they didn't do that, then half of it would have just boiled down to I'm gonna go kill that dude, and that was basically it.
Yeah, no, having engaged players is so important for something like that. So I'm glad to hear it.
Mm.
Were those campaigns? Did they have like a horror spin on them, or were they just kind of sort of straightforward fantasy? I'm curious, like how much of what I know of your writing was in there back then.
Horror always made it in some way or
Nice.
another. It was definitely it was based in like a fantasy world. It wasn't what's it, Forgotten Realms. It wasn't like the base D&D world. It was
Okay.
my own. But yeah, no, it was, I would say it's pretty horrible. They always told other players, like potential players, that it's like, oh, that's uh Spencer doesn't pull punches, or the world, can suck sometimes. And that always made me happy to hear.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if people are talking about it, that's what matters at the end of the day.
Mm.
That's really, really cool. I love that. Have you written any stories on Substack or otherwise that are kind of set within that universe that your campaigns were in, or is that just like a separate thing that was kind of just for that?
It's completely separate.
Okay.
Haven't done anything. There are two like demon god characters that I had written for one of my friends' backstories that I really want to like try to put into a story themselves, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
I gotcha. Okay, cool. So yeah, in general then, have you like from the very beginning always been like a horror writer, or was there anything that kind of pushed you in that direction?
I think I've always been interested in horror, just from like a media standpoint. I
Hmm.
think uh, like creatures always interest me. That's why like I think almost everything I write has some form of creature in it, if I'm
Right.
able. But no, I think just growing up, like playing video games, consuming like I would say like sci-fi, fantasy media, stuff like that. I was always interested in that kind of like dark aspect of it, and I liked bad endings. I like sad endings,
Mm.
so I feel like it always I was always pulled towards it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, as someone who's also been a writer and gamer my whole life, I have to ask, what are some of the and you don't have to like say like it's your all-time favorite, but I'm just curious, like what are some of your favorites in general is in the world of gaming specifically that sort of inspired your work over the years?
Well, Bloodborne's a huge one.
Nice.
It's just one of the. I would argue that it's probably the best cosmic horror video game. Period. Flat.
Mm-hmm.
It captures everything in the world, and the way From Software does storytelling, which is very like almost like passive,
Yep.
um, and baked into the environment. I feel like that's perfect for cosmic horror anyway. So it all just fit together. Um, Bloodborne, Soul Reaver was a big one when I was a kid.
Mhm.
One I played a lot, and I would say that it got me like into the idea of like gaming for hours on end. Was Morrowind. Me and my
Okay.
brother, yeah, we played that like until the disc didn't work. We played.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Morrowind was my first Elder Scrolls game, and there's nothing quite like that one in terms of just because like the setting of Morrowind was so alien compared to the more
Mhm.
traditional kind of fantasy settings of Oblivion and Skyrim. So Morrowind's always had a special place in my heart for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. It's I keep hoping and praying that we get like a remaster or remake similar
Yeah.
to how they did with Oblivion. I'm not holding my breath, but if it happens, then I'll be able to die happy.
Yeah, and 100%. I would play that in a heartbeat because Morrowind, like
Oh
I
yeah.
said, is my first and favorite. Okay, cool. Well, that's fantastic. I expected you to mention Bloodborne because I remember one of your first stories that I read that had kind of a medieval sort of horror setting. The name is escaping me, but I remember when I commented and I was like, this feels like Bloodborne, in terms of just the imagery, the setting, the kind of cosmic dread that permeated everything. Yeah, that was when one of the early moments when I was like, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing.
It's just a lot of consuming of that media, I think.
For sure, for sure. No, that's fantastic. So my next question here is, what actually brought you to Substack, and how long approximately have you been here?
I couldn't tell you how long I've been here. I don't remember. I would. There's probably a way to look at it. I just don't know. But I've been here a little while, and what brought me here is I had a. Uh, First, I had my own website,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh, that's a good way to, have all my stuff there." The cost was just kind of too high, so I couldn't keep it going.
Mm.
Uh, I did have a Twitter for a long time trying to get like an audience. That place is a cesspool though, and
Yep.
it did not work out. And I got really discouraged just because I'm bad at social media anyway. So it was very bad doing all that. And then I had a Patreon trying to put my stuff there. I can't remember. I want to say I saw it like on Reddit on like uh, authors server or something where it was like, oh, I have a Substack and I have this many readers and this many followers, whatever. And I decided I was like, hey, if Substack's welcoming to fiction, then I might as well try to do that to kind of cultivate an audience and haven't looked back. It's the only platform I actually use for my writing.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was gonna say you've obviously been here as long as I have for sure, because I remember I met you shortly after I joined. Like I said in the intro, you were one of the first writers that I interacted with.
I think you joined like I got to be close to like the same length as you because I'm pretty sure it was like pretty quick after I joined. I think you joined,
Mm-hmm.
so it's probably around the same time frame.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, so my next question then is how would you, from your perspective, describe your style of horror? Because obviously, I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but I would love to know kind of how you would describe it, for anybody who maybe hasn't read your work yet.
I don't know. I've been trying to. I always find it hard to like put it into a label or a category.
Yeah.
Um, it's because I've like talked to my partner about it, and they're like, "Oh, it has semblances of like splatterpunk or
Hmm.
this or that or whatever." Um, I would just say it's cosmic horror usually at the root of everything. Um, but obviously, I really love body horror, so I go into that. Um, Basically, if something's like gross, goopy, or I can make a creature out of it, that's what I'm going to do. And I just love the idea of, I guess, eliciting the emotion of disgust or fear or whatever it might be, even anger in some situations that horror can do that nothing else can do. So just, I guess, it's just horror. Like I don't know, it's boring, but I don't have like a decided like way to encapsulate it all. I guess it was basically me being like, oh, I don't see anything like this that's being made, so I'll do it myself. So it's like I would like to think it's semi unique, but I know most stories have been done before, and it's not like I'm breaking new ground here. It's still just horror, but I don't think it's anything like nameable in a category yet.
That's fair. Yeah. If I were to be asked the same question about your work, I think I would answer similarly. Obviously, cosmic horror's in there. Splatterpunk is a good one too, but it really does kind of carve out its own niche, and I think focusing on, as you just did, sort of the emotions that you're trying to evoke is really the best way of describing it because it does do that 100% in the best way possible. Yeah, I have a question later on related to what I think is the strongest element of your stories, but we'll wait a second to get to that one. Um,
Sure.
as a part two to my question just now, I'm curious. We obviously talked about gaming as a source of inspiration, but are there any other, specific authors or other mediums that you typically use to kind of, get inspired for new work, or how does that work for you when you're trying to come up with a new story?
I guess like when it comes to at least like authors, I could always say, Lovecraft, he's, the big name in
Hmm.
most cosmic horror writers backlog of like, oh, this is kind of where it started. Like I said before, like I couldn't find stuff that particularly interested me as much as like I wanted to be interested in it. Where it's like I would read something and be like, oh, I hope there's a creature. Nah, it turns out it's not a creature. It's like some completely natural thing, and that made me mad because I'm like, I wanted a creature.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
but, so I haven't found any like really big authors yet that are like have like kind of scratched that itch. The John Langdon's Fisherman was really good, and that definitely was in there in that cosmic horror, like folk horror kind of thing. And that got me almost looking at cosmic horror in a different light. With how he wrote, it was almost like a story of somebody telling a story, and like how it was like passed down from person to person, and it was a lot of like hearsay and stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of authors just didn't do it for me. As far as like movies and stuff, if it's like any semi cosmic horror, I'll devour that shit. Like The Void, Empty Man, Annihilation is a big one. Anything like that that gets my brain working will inevitably get me thinking about some other like story idea.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love the examples you picked out from the movies, by the way, because I've literally been talking about rewatching The Void this month, and so I was hoping that you had seen that one.
Oh yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's up there because it basically does everything the Thing does with like practical effects and
Hmm.
that kind of gross body horror, but then wraps it up in even more like pretty obvious cosmic horror, and I love it.
Yeah, there's another movie that I would recommend to you and everyone else listening to the episode. It just came out recently. I think it's called Strange Harvest is the name of it. I'd posted about it after I watched it, but
Ooh,
I would highly recommend it. It's kind of like a mockumentary style type thing about this like serial killer in Los Angeles, I want to say is where it's set. And it without spoiling anything, it takes a very cool cosmic horror turn. I won't say that it's like
nice.
reinventing the genre at all, but it was really cool to see a mainstream movie, because I believe it was in theaters and everything, kind of
Oh yeah, okay.
embrace cosmic horror in that way. So yes, would highly recommend it. I believe it's called Strange Harvest.
I'll add that to my list because I got a whole list that I need to start working through. I'm horrible at watching movies.
Yeah, no, but yeah, The Void was fantastic. I love practical effects, and I have to also compliment you on what you said about stories where it seems like it's going in a supernatural like monster direction, and then they try to explain it through normal means. I hate that too.
Mhm.
Like give me the
Yeah,
real deal. Like I'm here for the scariest possible outcome. You know?
yeah, it works when it's like, I guess when it's properly hinted at, having that like paranormal mix into reality, because obviously reality has like its own horrors that we have to deal with and stuff like that. But if you're like hinting at a monster, I feel like it kind of does a disservice to that, and you should just be like, okay, it's a monster now, because the monster can still represent. It's a vehicle for so many things.
Hmm.
Um, and I think some people, some writers, and some directors and stuff kind of shy away from it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think a perfect example that I can think of, like one of the first times I remember being betrayed by a story in that way, is M. Night Shyamalan's old movie, The Village. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, if you're listening, spoilers for that movie. But I hated, like, I remember seeing it and being like so mad when it turned out that the monsters were just people in masks. And obviously, it was interesting how
Mhm.
it all kind of played out after that. But that's, I think, a perfect example of like, just do the supernatural thing. Like, why do we got to make it, boring people
Uh,
in masks?
I blame that one solely on his, because he always has to have a twist,
Right.
and the twist ain't always worth it. And that's one of those situations where that twist was not worth it.
Right. Yes. You hit the nail on the head. I totally agree. All right. So my next question here, coming back to kind of your horror writing style. One of the things that's always struck me about your work specifically is the way that you kind of use imagery to really kind of hone in on just striking kind of, monster design, like kind of focusing on different senses. The way that you approach it, it really like, it just creates this atmosphere that I say this all the time about your work, but I've just never seen it anywhere else. And I think that's one of the things that you really bring to the table as a horror author. And it's something that every time I read your work, I'm like, okay, how can I do this at least a little bit as good as what I'm reading here, right? Like,
Man, you're gassing me up. You gotta stop.
I'm just saying. So what I would love to know, all that aside, what I would love to know is how do you approach that aspect of your stories? Like, because it's just, again, it's like, it's so concentrated and the impact of it is always just incredible. So I'm curious, like, what's your thought process when you're kind of approaching a scene or a monster or something like that? How do you paint that picture for the reader?
That's a tough one because even sometimes, like when I'm writing, I'll worry that I don't describe enough when it comes to the scene, the monster, whatever. I don't know because I don't really think about it too much when it comes to like what I'm trying to instill when it comes to like the five senses or whatever. I guess I try to focus on like what I would focus on in that situation.
Okay.
If I'm trying to get, if I'm getting disemboweled by something, like what am I going to focus on? That kind of thing. So like you may not see everything. You might just see the blood or whatever, like, or all you might feel is the pain. Like that could be the overwhelming sense. And, we've all experienced different kinds of pain in our life where like some can be just debilitating to the point where like you couldn't get up and move if you tried. And I think that I just focus on that because like most of the time my protagonists are just humans, obviously just dudes. And I know that in a situation like that, I would cave pretty quick. Usually the same is true for those characters as well. So I kind of just focus on basically the pain that they're experiencing at the time, especially when it comes to the monster interacting with them. It makes me really think because I don't know if I spend enough time on that stuff. I think I just I know it's uninspired and probably boring answer, but I kind of just go with my gut, like of like what the scene should include, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think when it comes to imagery and stuff like that, in my opinion, it's not so much about how much time you spend on it, but how much impact it has in the moment. And I think in that sense, you always nail that balance because I feel like, as part of your answer just now, I think some great like kind of advice for me and other writers, especially in horror, is to what you said, like put yourself in that scenario and think about what would you be focusing on, what would be the most priority kind of sensations or pain, as you said, in that moment. And I think that is really interesting because it creates that immersion that I really enjoy about your work.
That's something I learned pretty quick when I started writing because I noticed like people would be asking like, how do I write what's scary? Like, how do I know what's scary? And I'm like, if you write what scares you, you're going to scare somebody else. So do that first and foremost. And that's what I do.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I love that. And yeah, another aspect that I noticed just recently with your work was because obviously when we're talking about cosmic horror, it's a lot of like it's fear of the unknown, it's the unknowable, it's unfathomable, right? Impossible for people to wrap their minds around. And so I believe it was for one of the Narrative Feast prompts. I want to say on last week's podcast, I talked about one of your stories. It was The Dweller's Tomb, if I'm not mistaken. Which I loved that one, by the way. It felt very Stephen King-esque. It almost felt a little bit like It, like with the underground tunnels. It reminded me of like the sewers in Derry kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I loved that about it, and I really liked the ensemble cast. But there was a line in there that I mentioned in the podcast where you had described them kind of seeing the monster, and you really did a nice job, I think, of because it's like. It's that joke with Lovecraft where it's like he says it's indescribable and then he describes it the next sentence, right?
Yeah.
But with the way that you approached it, the line in question, you had said something about how when they looked at it, it was like a math problem that they were trying to figure out how to solve. And I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but I really liked that. And I was just curious, like, do you have any other examples you can think of, or I guess any advice to kind of people that are trying to write cosmic horror? as far as like approaching those concepts in a way where you don't leave out details for the reader, but you also kind of keep that sort of fear of the unknown in place, if that makes sense, right? Like you can't fully describe it, but you also can't really leave it out. Like, how do you sort of approach that balance?
Well, yeah, and that story was one of the first where I was like, I wanted to be super vague with what it actually was.
Yeah.
Just like try to give like a passing understanding of that there was something there beyond the dude. Um, but it's the same advice that I would give with the scenes where what would you focus on if you saw like a cougar in the wild? Like in the moment, you're probably not going to be able to see the whole picture. You're not going to be able to see, you know, the haunches of it or what kind of fur it has or whatever. You're probably going to see its eyes and its angry face, and that's basically it. Whatever else is there is kind of irrelevant to your brain, and that's how I like to think about cosmic entities, where it's like our mind is picking out what it can discern
Mm,
and
right.
kind of leaves everything else out.
Okay, yes. I think that's a fantastic answer. I'm actually gonna have to remember that next time I go to write another cosmic horror piece because I love that. Yeah, yeah. It's like what can you actually, as a human being, perceive,
Mhm.
and then everything else is just impossible. That's amazing. I love that.
With our monkey brains, like when fear gets us, like when a predator is around, like it's a primal thing, and that I think a lot of people kind of skip over when they have like a monster or something, or like even like a serial killer or something like that. Like in the moments of running for your life, things work differently in your brain.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like all the thought processes and kind of chemical reactions, it switches everything over. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Okay, great. So next question I had for you. In addition to the work that you do with your short stories and stuff, you also post poetry from time to time. So my question for you is, what's that process look like when you're doing a poem versus a short story? And, is your approach kind of similar, or in what ways is it different?
I would say it's pretty similar, just like I guess how I sit down and start writing, but I might have like a concept or even just like a written line that I thought was like a cool line and I kind of build off of it. But a lot of it is because, especially a lot of the poems that I've been posting recently, they're kind of like a exercise for myself where it's like I sit down and I write one. So usually it's mostly just coming out my brain, like as I sit there, like without really much of a plan. So wherever the first line kind of takes me, I'll kind of follow that lead pretty much.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So it's almost like a free verse, like stream of consciousness kind of approach.
Yeah, I would say definitely that. Obviously, not all of them are going to be that way because some of them I'll like think out a bit more. But yeah, a lot of the most recent ones are just kind of me just doing it.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. And I would say that with your poetry, it's also like, what stands out to me is just it's almost like a concentrated form of what you do in your stories in terms of like, the impact of the word choice and the imagery and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, I don't think until I joined Substack have I ever really seen horror poetry, but it seems to be pretty big.
I mean, that came from the same spot where my writing did with nonfiction or with fiction. Um, is like I haven't really seen this anywhere,
Hmm.
so I'm gonna keep doing it. That's why like I want to do my poetry collection and put those all together in kind of like this book that looks like a horror book kind of thing, but it's all poetry. But yeah, no, it's interesting, and I've seen some other people on Substack definitely pull at the strings of similar concepts and in that genre, and I love seeing it.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. Yeah, that's amazing. So speaking of kind of the poetry collection you mentioned, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is kind of your projects that you've got going on, outside of Substack or just your kind of larger projects in general. I know you've mentioned in the past you're working on a novel, and then just now you mentioned a potential poetry collection. So I was just curious, can you kind of walk us through what you got going on behind the scenes? Maybe pitch us some of the ideas you have.
Well, the poetry collection is I've talked about it. It's basically going to be all the poetry that I've already posted, as well as probably some new ones if I feel like it. Um, all just fits like kind of that theme of horror, and I think it'd be fun. Um, my other big project, yeah, is the novel that I keep procrastinating on. I think it's definitely a daunting experience going after a novel just because of the length and having to make sure that it's structured right and everything. It's not. I would say I'm still in the first draft of the first novel because it is planned for. I have plans for two just because of how the things need to go. But why you got to make me pitch it, man? That's difficult.
Well, yeah, I say pitch, but it's more just like I'm just curious, kind of what the premise is. You don't have to, but I don't really want to put you on the spot in that way.
The first one is the main character. I always thought, I'm like, okay, I love necromancy. Necromancy in like fantasy settings is awesome. I love it. I've never seen like really a modern interpretation of it. And then when I sat down to think about it, because I'm like, I want my main character to have like necromancy as like an ability. I'm like, how do I make necromancy more cosmic horror or body horror? And I came up with what I came up with, which was I base a lot of the how he reanimates bodies. I don't know if you know how a chrysalid works, like with the caterpillar and the chrysalid, but they basically melt down and reform. So that's what the bodies do when he melts them down and they reform. So think like The Thing or The Void kind of style of body horror. And it's all coming from a cosmic entity that's very heavily based off of butterflies. And I took the butterfly because I was like, oh, it's cool to take something that's seen as pretty and make it into a horrible thing.
Right.
But it follows this guy basically looking for missing persons. As he continues down that road, it starts to unravel more and more of what's going on. Near the end, something big happens that changes the playing field for the second book. But it's basically it's almost like a noir, like PI thing that really devolves into body horror and cosmic horror the further you get into it.
God, that sounds amazing. I also love necromancers. Like for example, back in the day, one of my first RPGs that I played on the PC was Diablo 2, and I never played as anything but a necromancer.
Yeah, necromancer all the way.
So that's fantastic. No, that premise is really amazing. So you mentioned it's the first book of a series. Then, do you have an idea of how many books you want to do total there?
Right now, I know it's two. I don't know because I don't have the second one like outlined or anything. Right. I just know like that it's going to be. It has to be a thing because it changes so much. Because I tried to mash them together, but I feel like the shift because there's like a 25-year time jump between the two, jumping back and forth. I never liked that much in books, so I'm like, I'm going to try to avoid it. So separating them seemed like the logical thing.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so how far along is the current draft of the first book?
I know I can get revisions done pretty quick, so I would say like 60% done.
Okay, nice. Do you have plans to self-publish, or what's the distribution method that you're thinking of?
I'm going to try traditional at first.
Okay.
Just so I can say I tried.
Yeah.
But then if it comes to it, yeah, then I'm going to go down the self-publishing route. Because I know there's a bunch of cool people on Substack that seems like they have ways of publishing things. And if I can go through one of them, that would be actually the coolest thing in the world. Because, I've seen all these people that are awesome. And I would love working with them rather than, some like Amazon. Don't want to have to do that, but if I do, then I do.
Yeah. No, your thoughts on this are mirroring my own in terms of I have a cosmic horror novel that I've been working on for many, many years now, and I have the exact same mindset. Like I want to finish it and I want to try the traditional route, but I have seen so much kind of success and just inspiring sort of stories on Substack with people who have gone the self-publishing route, and it got me definitely interested in that either as an alternative or as I finish the book, I'll just have to wait and see. I feel like I've always dreamed of being traditionally published, but I know as I get older, the reality of it is kind of setting in.
No, you hang on to that pipe dream. If I can hang on to it, you can hang on to it.
For sure, for sure. No, that's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, that's awesome. So, in regards to the novel, I know you've posted about it a few times on Substack. Have you done any kind of articles or kind of like side stories or anything related to this world on Substack, or is it very much kind of separated in its own book right now?
Um, so I'm gonna uh drop some info here that people who listen might view it differently, but it's hard to put it in context without the novel. Uh, Technically, almost every one of my short stories is within that same universe,
Oh, that is nice. Okay.
but it's like they're all separated when it comes to like the stories that are being told. Um, just because I like the idea of like a world almost like SCP style, like there's anomalies out there kind of thing. I love that idea where there might be like, oh, a shadow agency that kind of like monitors them or like captures them or stuff like that. That stuff's always tickled me. Um, so a lot of these like creatures I come up with, they're all within that universe and some directly linked to like some of the quote unquote gods that are in the book.
Interesting. Okay, that I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When we're talking about your universe, then I'm curious, like, is all of this happening like on the same planet, or is it like kind of a broader, like actual universe, or is it even bigger than that, like a multiverse? I'm curious, like, what is the kind of scope, I guess you could say, of your universe here?
I've always loved the idea of like interdimensional stuff,
Hmm.
just as like a concept in general. So I know a lot of like the creatures I come up with might have like origins within other dimensions,
Hmm.
but it's usually like it's all based on Earth. It's basically all going on here. Nothing outlandishly like different planet or anything like that. Just because the stories I like to do without humanity as a whole and without I guess the fragility of the planet, as weird as that might sound, um, that we're already on, I feel like it loses some of that punch. And I just love the idea of because of what's going to happen to the planet is a big change in the second book, and it kind of unravels everything.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, it's super fascinating to me to talk about kind of connected universes, especially with an author like yourself, because I have my connected horror universe that's very much inspired by like cosmic horror and Lovecraft and stuff like that. So it's interesting because I also would say that I definitely like really enjoy stories where there's like kind of a whole spread of different monsters, gods, whatever.
Mm.
And SCP is a great example. Yeah, absolutely. That is really, really cool. So, next, I'd like to talk about kind of being a horror author in general. The question that I wrote down here was related to a note that you'd posted the other day, kind of expressing concern that your work is unapproachable. And I thought that was interesting in the sense that I think that's something that and just about anybody working in horror probably struggles with because it is a genre that you see a lot of. Obviously, you see a lot of horror stories, you see a lot of movies, and so on. But it's not, I guess, as digestible of a genre as something like fantasy or romance, right? Where it's just like,
Yeah.
it's kind of easier to get an audience in that. So, um, I'm curious from your perspective as a horror author, what are some of the kind of obstacles that you've run into trying to build an audience for horror? And have you kind of figured out any sort of, tactics or approaches that have worked for you in terms of, kind of breaking down that barrier?
I haven't really tried anything specific to try to break down the barrier because I'm just like, I'm gonna write what I want to write, and
Yeah.
if people like it, people like it. But I like to think the reason horror is so hard to break into is because there's like two barriers when it comes to other stuff having kind of one, where it's like art is subjective, but what makes you afraid is also subjective.
Hmm.
So you have the art and whether or not the fear, disgust, whatever, etc., is affecting that reader. Um, so it's almost like these two layers of entry, barrier of entry, basically, that people have to get behind because you'll hear horror readers be like, oh, I like slashers or I like ghost stories. but not necessarily like the goopy gross stuff. And then you have the opposite people who like the goopy gross stuff. And so it's almost like a divide within the horror genre already.
Mm.
So you have all these subdivisions of horror and what people can handle, what people can't handle. So I just think it's pretty spread out just because of, humans being humans and not like being able to handle like stuff that might toe the line of like real world trauma or stuff like that. It can be very difficult for some people, so I understand that. But you go in and horror is, what's the word, intimidating, I guess, to some.
Yeah.
Just because, especially the fanaticism of some of the fans, like they make it their whole personality, and I mean that in the best way, when it's like, oh, I love horror, and that could be intimidating to outside readers and watchers, whatever. So I just think horror as it exists is always going to be like that. I hope that people will start to liken to it a bit more and start to give it more of a chance, I guess, when it comes to stories.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer. Especially what you said about sort of like the multiple layers of barriers to entry. Just given the subjective nature of it, obviously the way that it affects people, and of course, strong opinions on what people like versus what they don't like. All those things manifest a lot more in horror. So I think that's a really good point that you brought up. So looking ahead, we're almost at the end of 2025 here. Looking ahead to the next year, I'm curious, what are kind of some goals that you have in mind? Obviously, it sounds like you'll be hopefully, maybe finishing up that draft of your novel. But are there any other kind of interesting sort of milestones or projects that we can look forward to seeing more from you in the coming year?
Well, I'm going to keep pushing out short stories as fast as I can, or as fast as comfortably as I can do them, as well as poetry and stuff. I also plan to, once I'm able to kind of get my time allocated better, to actually start doing readings of some of my poetry, because I thought it would be cool to do.
Yeah.
And besides that, the poetry book I want to finish and either probably self-publish, but do that. And then I want my novel, the first one, done, and not first draft, done. I want that done.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to hear that you're considering posting some narration for some of your work, because just talking to you now, I feel like you've got a really good voice for narration, and obviously that seems to be pretty popular on Substack. I've seen the discussion, kind of, more and more people doing narration, kind of talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like audio definitely helps a lot of people, because I know not everybody likes to sit down and just, read words on a screen. So I'm like, it could be fun to try to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's fantastic. All right. Well, my last question for you here. This is something I ask all my guests. So yeah, you and I have been on Substack for at least the same amount of time, if not a little bit longer on your end. What are some of the lessons you've learned specifically about being here on Substack and kind of being part of this community? What are some of the lessons that you've learned that you would kind of impart to other writers who maybe are just kind of starting out, just getting ready to post their stuff for the first time?
Like I said before, I'm pretty terrible at social media and anything with the word social in it in general. But I would say just make sure you're honest about what you're doing, whether that's horror, romance, whatever, and make sure that you're not only giving feedback to other writers and, making sure that you're reading their work when you can. Obviously, don't make it like some kind of like job, but as long as you're giving feedback and receiving feedback well, you're going to get better as a writer. And I think that's the important thing that you need to focus on is getting better. Always, there's never a point when you're the best. So you just keep going.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And something that I haven't mentioned yet in this interview is that you were one of the first writers, not only that I interacted with, but one of the first writers that I was really able to kind of open up that door to like mutual feedback. I remember, you had given me some feedback on one of the first short stories that I posted on Substack. I believe it was Widowmaker, one of my oldest short stories. And yeah, I remember the feedback. It was so balanced. It was thoughtful. It was detailed. It was everything you would want from feedback. And I remember taking that into my next story, and then I think you've given me feedback on a few other ones, and to this day, I still think about some of the things that you suggested, and I see that reflected in my work, and that's just a perfect example of why feedback is so important.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're kind of doing it on your own, or if you're surrounded by people that won't tell you, I would say, the hard truth.
Yeah.
Not that like, oh, this sucks, it's never going to be that bad, but if you're like told like, hey, this isn't working, you can, if you're smart, you'll take it into your next writing and be like, okay, if it didn't work here, it's not going to work here. I need to see how I can fix that. Or, you can even ask somebody who gives that feedback, be like, what do you think would work better? It's not like you're caving your creativity. You're just allowing it to take the hit and keep going. Like, I've been told that my writing isn't good, and they couldn't tell me why. They just didn't like it. And that's not constructive, because I can't use that to get better. But I know that if somebody's saying that it's not good, there's something in there that might be deterring people, might be souring the experience. And obviously that's not true for everybody. If you hear it once, you're probably fine. But if you keep hearing the same feedback on the same thing, you need to make changes.
Yeah, that's extremely good advice as well. There's a writing podcast I listen to, or one of the hosts on there. He says the same thing all the time. He's like, if one person doesn't like it, well, that's okay. Some people just have bad opinions, is what he says. But he's like, but if you're hearing it, like you said, over and over, then yeah, it's something that you should address. And again, and that's why it's so important that feedback is like specific and constructive in that way. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. Well, Spencer, I have been eagerly awaiting this interview, and it went even better than I could have expected. So just wanted to thank you so much for coming on to the show here and sharing all the amazing stuff you're working on. I know I, for one, am very excited about that book. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you for your time, and thanks for being a part of this community. Like I said, you've really, I know I'm always singing your praises, and I don't just do that, right? Like I truly believe in what you're doing and in the quality of your work. And so, yeah, and it's not outside the realm of reason by any stretch of the imagination to say that you have inspired me and improved me as a writer, not only with your feedback, but with the work that you're doing. So, yeah, it was an honor to have you on the show, and I just really appreciate your time.
I thank you so much for having me, man. Do it anytime. Can't wait to hear the episode.
All right, and a big thank you again to Spencer D.W. for coming on to the show. It was really exciting to get a chance to talk to him about his iconic horror style. Well, folks, the First Indulgence is over, as of midnight tonight. It has been an absolutely incredible month. We had hundreds of stories submitted to all the prompts, and all the support throughout has just been phenomenal. I say it all the time, but this really is the greatest community that I've ever been a part of. And while Lord Devereaux is going to take a very long nap, he will be back to host more challenges in the future. Stay tuned to the Writer's Journey for announcements on that. In the meantime, I'll be resuming our weekly power-up prompts where we change genres each week, and I give you a setting, character, and conflict to work with. I'll also be resuming our weekly shout-out threads in my subscriber chat for the podcast in November. This means every Tuesday moving forward, you'll be able to submit links to your latest work for a chance to have me featured on the show. November will also bring back our weekly writing discussion threads. These are also posted in my subscriber chat on Wednesdays and allow you to weigh in on some topics that we'll discuss on the podcast as well. For many of you, it's basically back to business as usual, but with all the new friends that have subscribed since the start of the First Indulgence, I wanted to reiterate on some of these weekly threads and how it'll all work after the challenge is done. And of course, I'll be getting back into my ongoing Devine series, The Order of the Pawn, and I'm sure some new short stories and poems will find their way here as well, because you never know when inspiration will strike. But hey, in the meantime, thank you again for being here, sincerely, for sharing your art with the world, for supporting me when things get tough in my personal life, and for all the days in between. You are all incredibly talented and wonderful people. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful Halloween. I myself will be running an event for my day job out in Pasadena, so I'll be quite busy today and over the weekend, but I look forward to announcing the winner of the First Indulgence very soon this coming week. In the meantime, stay safe, stay hydrated, and stay creative. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.
I believe it is time for me to enter what you humans call a food coma.
Yeah, I guess it is. You know, it really sucks the challenge is over. I think I'm gonna miss you, which is crazy to say.
Oh, do not worry. I will be back. My hunger cannot be satiated. And now that I've been introduced to all these writers, well, let's just say my appetite has never been stronger.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Sleep well, my sweet devourer.